Hello, hello, and welcome to JasonNewland.com. Mama, 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 mama. Hello, hello. Welcome to JasonNewland.com. My name is Jason Newland. Yeah, I'm here with Vinny, who just woke me up. It's particularly early in the morning. And I thought he wanted something to eat. So I got him some new breakfast. He didn't really eat much food yesterday. He had dried food, but he didn't eat much wet food. I just put it on the floor, on a bowl, and you just chuck it on the floor. I'm not a caveman, and he's not interested. So he's just lying here next to me, very quiet. It looks like he's thinking, like he's contemplating, almost like he's got some kind of philosophical dilemma he's battling with. And you might think, oh, how did I come to that conclusion? By looking at the back of his head. I don't know, maybe it's just a feeling, yeah, maybe an invisible, emotional, spiritual even connection that we have. And you may be wondering where I'm going with this. And so am I. I've got no idea what I'm talking about right now. But then, how often do I know what I'm talking about? How often? I mean, quite a lot. It's just me just waffling on about nothing. And it seems to be another case of that particular activity occurring again. Yes. So, I'm tired. So. Yesterday. Oh, I had to do my PIP forms, my personal independence payment forms. And I put them off. I put them off for about a week. About a week. Yeah, about a week. And then yesterday I had 9 days to get it back to them. So I decided, that's it. I'm going to get on with it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get down to it. I'm going to, cut my toenails. I was going to have 3 baths. I was going to try and invent a new way of cooking fish fingers, a way that's never been done before. Maybe discover a new alternative for the wheel. Pretty much anything but to fill the pip form in. I was looking for distractions, excuses not to do that form, fill it in, because it's not. I just didn't find it easy. I didn't really. I didn't. Yeah, it wasn't particularly enjoyable. I mean, I got it. I did it. I did do it, and I made a bit of a hash up of it. They may well send it back. I mean, honestly, I think I'm probably going to be the only person who gets their pip form sent back to them graded like A to D. Honestly, I'm going to probably be like D minus. Like, needed more work, more preparation. You know, why do you keep talking about donuts? There's going to be lots of weird, for sort of probably comments on there about it. I mean, we didn't need to know about your toenails. So, I need to cut my toenails. I think that's that's now in my mind. I mean, don't get me wrong, my toenails aren't like out of control. They're not living their own life. You know, I'm not getting woken up at 2 in the morning by my toenails that are coming back from a nightclub. I'm not. My toenails are fine, they're still intact, but they're just getting a little bit long. I want to say long, you know, nothing weird. They're not, you know, I haven't got like the local newspaper, like begging me for pictures. It's nothing like that. They're not unusually long. They're just longer. Longer. That's all. That's all it is. Do you think I sound like James Bond, Roger Bond? That's the way it is. My name's Jason. No, my name's Newland. Jason Newland. Who's the other Bond? George Lazenby. How weird is that? One James Bond movie. Just one. Yet his name stayed famous, being the second James Bond. Wait a minute, I thought it was Roger Moore who was the second James Bond. Roger Moore? No, George Lazenby. Apparently, I think he didn't want to do it again. He didn't enjoy the experience, I think. Or some other reason. I mean, so there's going to be a reason, isn't there, why he didn't do a second one. And I don't know about you. I mean, I don't know where you live in the world, and I don't know what you're doing right now. I mean, you might be doing yoga. I don't know, do I? Getting funny looks from the other people on the bus. I don't know. But in my country, the country that I'm in charge of, the TV channels still, the main terrestrial channels still show James Bond movies. And bearing in mind all the different James Bonds that there have been, and there's been a few now, can I remember the last time that George Lazenby's movie was on television? His version of James Bond. No. Oh, wait a minute. Oh no, it was yesterday. That's why I'm thinking about it. No, it wasn't. I can't remember. They never put it on. Well, I'm not saying they never put it on, but they rarely put even it's like the only James Bond movies that seem to be on that, sort of Christmas, well, not Christmas, but, during the daytime kind of holiday season, seems to be the Roger Moore or Sean Connery. Roger Moore hasn't made a James Bond movie for 600 years. I always liked Roger Moore. There was something about him I liked. There was the old... What was that? He was in Tony Curtis. Him and Tony Curtis were in a TV show in the 60s. A good TV show. The chemistry was really good. It was funny. It was bright, colourful. What was it called? I forget, but I quite liked it. Not in the 60s, because I wasn't alive in the 60s. But before, when I was alive, most of the TV programmes I've enjoyed have been when I've been alive. Okay, that sounded weird. I forget the name of the TV show, but it was a good TV show. Roger Moore, before being James Bond, before changing his name to James Bond, he was Simon Templar, the Saint, do, which I don't think is the do, something like that. The Saint. There's very little difference between the Saint and James Bond, except that James Bond is a little bit more determined, a little bit more trigger happy, maybe. It's almost like the same character. He even looks the same. I don't know why it was called the Saint, because they had a different version in the early 80s, I think, and it was the Saint, but it was a new actor called Ian Ogilvy. It was great, really, really good. I'd never seen the original, so I had nothing to compare it with. But I still think Ian Ogilvy was great. But the advert would show, like before the TV show came on, do, or something like that. And he had a halo above his head. And he'd look up. And I thought, I got to get me one of them. That is so cool. It's like almost like he winked to himself, and this halo just appeared above his head. This light, and I thought, wow. And I remember saying to my stepmom, because this is before the TV show came on, I said, could he turn himself invisible? She said, you have to wait and see. Now, clearly she knew that he wasn't going to go invisible, because she'd been around in the 60s and she'd seen the original one with Roger Moore. I said, has he got superpowers? Can he fly? And she said, you're going to have to wait and see. I said, has he got super speed? She said, what? I said, well, super speed. For example, if someone chucked an egg, a rotten egg at him, would you be able to just like stop the egg, just take it out of the air because everything's moving so slowly, and replace it with a nice fresh egg, and then go and stand back where he was, so that he gets covered in the nice egg rather than the off egg? And she said, no, but why would he want to do that? I said, what do you mean, why would you wouldn't want to be hit by a smelly off egg, would you? She said, yeah, but if he could move extra fast, firstly, I've got two questions. I said, okay, so you got one question left. She said, no, I've got two questions. I said, so you're not including... Oh, wait a minute, that was a statement, wasn't it? She said, yeah. I said, okay, you haven't got to have an attitude, I'm only 9. She said, all right, but you should know the difference between a statement and a question. And I said, I'm still learning. I said, and you wouldn't believe what else, stepmummy. She said, what? I said, they're only trying to teach me French. French? I've only just learnt what a full stop is in English, and now they're trying to teach me another language. She said, I know. I tried to have a word with them. I said, you did? She said, yeah, I tried to let them know that you weren't really perhaps up for learning a new language, especially French. Just didn't think that you'd be, wanted to do it and that you wouldn't be able to do it. I said, okay, so how did it get on? She said, I don't know. What do you mean? So I couldn't understand them. The bloke was French. Okay. I said, stepmum? He said, yes, stepson, she said. She said, he said, I don't know, someone's talking. I said, when you asked the question to the French teacher, when you said, when you made this statement, that perhaps I wasn't ready to learn a new language. She said, yeah. I said, was you in the office? She said, no. I said, were you in the canteen? She said, no. I said, were you on the roof? She giggled and she said, no, I wasn't on the roof. I said, in that case, were you perchance sitting in the classroom with all the other pupils? She said, yeah. How did you know that? I said, okay. And, just a reminder, when you're in that classroom with the other pupils learning French, am I correct in saying that you can only speak in French? There's no English speaking at all. And she said, oui, 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 oui. I said, all right, well, go if you need to. And we both laughed, because I should explain this. Oui, like going oui, oui means yes, yes in France. Because in France, if you're listening in France, you'll probably be aware of this. I mean, it might be new information, but in France, this might blow your mind, but anyway, I feel like I'm kind of I give too much away in these podcasts, too much knowledge. Anyway, in France, they have a different language. They speak different. It's almost like they've got a different word for everything. And oui means yes, yes. But over here, oui means got to do a wee, like a number one, like a wee, not literally. I don't shout out wee when I urinate. I don't. I sometimes do. Sometimes. Do you ever stand on a little stool when you go to the toilet and do a wee? Just to pretend to be taller. I'm like, oh, this is what it feels like. I can't be the only one that does that. Anyway, I said, so you was in the classroom? She said, yeah. I said, you can only speak French? She said, yeah. I said, that's probably the problem. There's a miscommunication. He was probably, if I'm just guessing, speaking French, and you don't know any French. She said, yeah, but there's something about him, he's very captivating. I said, do you mean the big box of chocolates he has on his desk that everyone can just help themselves? She said, yeah. Oh, it was lovely. I said, fair enough, but not lovely enough to try and learn a new language. And she said, well, maybe not. I said, see? And then she said something very weird to me. She said, do you see JJ? I said, yes, step-mummy. Wondering, she's never called me that before. She said, I got a question for you. I said, all right, go on. She said, do you remember why we're talking about French lessons and boxes of chocolate on the teacher's desk And I said, I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure. We kind of, don't really know. I don't know. She said, yeah, you sound confused. I said, well, I'm not confused. I'm interested. Very mildly interested in what comes next. Because I don't really know how I got here to this part of the recording, and let's face it, it's not the first time I've ended up in the middle of nowhere conversationally. But I'm trying to find a way out so I can get back to the original content or subject matter that was being verbally discussed. And my stepmom shouted out, "The saint." I said, She said it was The Saint, the TV show The Saint. I thought, okay, what's that got to do with France, though? She said, I don't know. I can't do all the work for you. I thought it'd be enough for me just to let you know the subject you were talking about. Yeah, you didn't really let me know, did you? You just said The Saint. I didn't know if you started to sing, "Oh, when the saints come marching in." I mean, I don't know why you would sing that. Yeah, that's probably one of my favourite Elvis movies. Is it Roustabout? I'm just a roustabout, drifting from town to town. No one can hold me down, I'm just a knockabout boy. I don't know if I got all those lyrics correctly. But George Lazenby, or Lazenby, he only did one James Bond movie. And if I'm correct, he was a competing world champion in judo. Yeah. I mean, it might not be true, but it might also be true. That's the things about things that are true. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. I mean, technically, something that isn't true wouldn't be in the category of something that is true. But it's still within that ballpark. Because sometimes, I might answer a question in a way that sounds like I'm just blatantly lying, when actually I just forgot. So, for example, I think a few days ago, my neighbour asked me, he said something about, I thought you were going to bring your step ladder downstairs. to lend it to us. This was at the weekend. Said, I thought you said you were going to bring it down yesterday. And I said, oh, I wasn't able to because I had to do the world's largest jigsaw puzzle, which was of a really large teddy bear, and it was 68 foot long. It was to size, to scale, and that's why I didn't get back in time to give you the step, for you to stand on to do this really, really long jigsaw puzzle of a teddy bear, 68 foot long or whatever it was. And she said, "Are you lying?" And I said, "Yeah." And she didn't seem to be upset. She was more confused. I don't know what confused her most. The fact that I was lying, the content of the lie, or just that my toenails really needed to be cut. And for some reason I kept showing them to my neighbours. Now, I don't know about you. I'm so tired. I'm half asleep now doing this. I'm starting to drift. I quite easily just drift off to sleep. It's very quiet in here. Yeah, I could. Why did I start thinking about rice pudding? My stepmum, my first stepmum, used to cook rice pudding. Yeah, it was nice. Tasted so different from the rice pudding you get in a shop or in a little rice pudding. I actually fell asleep during that sentence. I know I was talking about rice pudding, but I just drifted off momentarily as I was talking about rice pudding. But in my defense, it's not probably the most exciting subject I could have chosen. It's not the worst subject. There's more boring subjects than that. Yeah, there must be. A history of concrete. That would be boring. No offence to concrete. Yeah, I Don't mind concrete.